Hi, this is Greg McRae, founder and CEO of Foundation Group, and welcome back to another installment of Q&A with Greg on our 501c3 University channel. If you haven't already, go ahead and click that subscribe button. That way you'll be notified when we post new content, and that's happening about every 2 weeks around here. And only about 20% of our viewers are actually subscribers, so we would love it if you subscribed. Hit the like button too if you're enjoying our content, as that really helps out the channel. We sincerely appreciate all of our followers and subscribers. Today's Q&A installment revolves around a topic that we get asked about on a weekly basis on our blog, and that's the issue of moving your nonprofit from one state to another. From the volume of questions we get on this subject, it's obviously something that happens pretty frequently, and we've got 3 different questions on this topic, so let's go. Question number 1 comes from Eugene, who writes, I have run a mentoring program for at-risk teens for over 10 years in Georgia. Recently, I moved to South Carolina and would like to do here what I've been doing there. Do I need to start over? Great question, Eugene, and very typical of what we get asked on this subject. In most cases, it probably makes more sense to keep your Georgia organization, assuming that it's in good standing with the state and the IRS. As long as you can find a registered agent in Georgia, it's pretty easy to maintain your corporate presence there and just start conducting your mentoring work in your new home state of South Carolina. Now, most likely, you're going to need to file a certificate of authority with South Carolina, and a certificate of authority is, in this case, South Carolina giving you permission to operate your Georgia nonprofit physically in the Palmetto State. You'll need to register for approval for charitable solicitations in South Carolina as well. As for Georgia, like I said earlier, maintain your corporate presence there by getting a registered agent in Georgia, file your corporate annual report on time, and maintain your Georgia solicitation license there too, and you should be good. As part of the answer to the 3rd question, I'm going to talk about why we prefer this arrangement over changing the state of incorporation, so hang around until then. The next question comes from Mahindran, and he writes, we have a plan to start a new nonprofit in Nevada. We plan to move next year and possibly again in another 5 years. In this situation, is it better to register in Delaware? In your blog on this subject, you don't recommend Delaware, but instead prefer the state we plan to operate in. One potential landing place next year is going to be California. Sounds like you're just not sure where you're going to land. Maybe Nevada, maybe California. Sounds like it could be somewhere else as well. So in this case, Mahindran doesn't have an existing nonprofit yet, so the question isn't so much about moving, but how to be best prepared in his startup plans now for his inevitable move. In this case, I probably wouldn't recommend Delaware still, but frankly, Delaware is fine if you don't know yet. My instinct says wait until you get to Nevada and set up there. Incorporate, get your 501c3 status with the IRS, then maintain Nevada as your ongoing corporate home. My reasoning for this is that you don't actually know for sure that you will be moving again in 5 years. Maybe you'll decide Nevada is too great to leave and you'll make it your permanent base of conducting your program. If so, you have the advantage of being incorporated where you live and operate, which overall we think works out better in most situations. See our video on Delaware incorporation for more details on that. We'll link it in the description below. And if you do end up moving, my advice is similar to what I told Eugene in question 1. Our 3rd and final question comes from Dialari, and she writes, hello, I like the solution of keeping the old state of incorporation. However, in order to keep the nonprofit corporation active, you need to have a physical address. So, without a physical address in the old state, is it really possible to move states without losing the original EIN, 501c3 status, and trustworthy fundraising history? I'm really troubled by the fact that simply moving would trigger dissolution. Thanks. Now, Dialari hits the bullseye on exactly why we don't prefer to see a nonprofit move its state of incorporation. The fact is, the IRS says that they will allow a nonprofit to essentially reincorporate in another state and transfer the existing 501c3 status to that new corporation, assuming the operations continue as they have. Now, that sounds wonderful in principle, but in practice, not so much. The issue has to do with state nonprofit law. Here's the dilemma. Most states require a nonprofit that is dissolving its corporate status in that state to file a notice of dissolution with the state attorney general's office. Now, part of that notice includes a plan for distributing remaining assets for charitable purposes, as required by both state and federal law. Now, technically, it may be possible to designate your new state corporation as the beneficiary of those assets, but that assumes you have it set up already. There's no guarantee that's going to be a smooth process. There's also the issue of your EIN number. Now, this is where the IRS is pretty consistent with their own rules. Your EIN is permanently tied to your existing corporate entity. In creating a new corporate entity in another state, well, it should necessitate a new EIN number. And this EIN issue is a big one because your 501c3 status is tied to that number. My point is this: when you dissolve a nonprofit corporation, you're telling that state that you're winding down operations. But you're not, are you? In fact, not only will the new state corporation be getting the assets of the old corporation, you will definitely want to transfer any existing debt to the new entity as well. But is that even legal? Not always. And what about intellectual property or existing loan agreements or leases? This stuff is messy, and just because the IRS says you can technically do it, I'm telling you that you probably shouldn't. So Dialari, your question is spot on. Dissolving a corporation that isn't winding down operations is just a bad idea overall. The issue with your physical location in your old state is solved by your registered agent's address. Keep your corporation, your original EIN, and state fundraising registration in your old state. Get a certificate of authority in your new state and register for solicitations there too, and you should be good. Moving operations from one state to another is always going to be a big task for any nonprofit. In most situations, it makes more sense to maintain your original state of incorporation and simply follow your new state's rules on registering a foreign state corporation in order to begin your operations there. Well, I hope these questions and answers have helped you understand this topic a little bit better. Got questions yourself? Ask them in the comment section below. We'll try to get to as many of those comments as we can. That's it for this episode. Thanks for watching. Now go serve your community. Hey, do me a favor and don't navigate away just yet. We would really appreciate it if you would hit the like button below, as it really helps get our content recommended to more people. Subscribe if you haven't already, as we have great content coming your way on a regular basis. Finally, you can click the little bell icon to be notified of new content when we post it. To learn more about Foundation Group, you can visit us on the web at www.501c3.org. Thanks, and we'll see you next time.